What's up, everybody? I'm Leah B. Jackson, and I'm here with pro gamer Greg Fields, also known as Idra.
Hey, Leah.
Hey. Today, we're going to be walking you through the best way to play as Illidan in Heroes of the Storm. Let's get to it.
Yep, let's do it.
All right, so here we are in theater mode. Tell us a little bit about Illidan's abilities, Greg.
Well, Illidan is a pretty unique hero in that he, early on, is an assassin, kind of a squishy hero. He wants to get in, he wants to deal damage, and he wants to get out. But he has a very cool, unique ultimate in Metamorphosis that actually completely transforms him into a tanky damage dealer in team fights. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. He's not a Zeratul who has to run around wasting time trying to stay alive. He gets to just go in and pack a punch, despite having that really high damage output that you usually associate with assassins. So let's take a quick look at all of his abilities and see exactly how he does that. Okay, so everything with Illidan is dependent on his Betrayer's Mark, which is his passive. And that is whenever you use one of your ultimate abilities or apply a Q auto attack, you put a mark on a hero, like this. And you do that just by pressing Q and then auto attacking them. And you see that little mark that persists for about 8 seconds. And this buffs any other abilities you use on a hero that is does have that mark. His second ability is the Crescent Sweep, which is his W. And that is just an area of effect damage like that. But when you hit a hero who has a mark on him, it does 25% bonus damage and also applies a silence, which makes him extra good against squishy casters, as most of them have escape abilities. However, if they're silenced, they can't use that, so you're free to kill them. And Illidan's third ability is his Lunge, his Gap Closer, and this is very important because although he has a high damage output, he has trouble sticking to his targets, so this is what allows him to do that. And the important thing, as with everything else, if you have a mark on your opponent, when you hit them with the E, you do a backflip over them, get behind them, and it actually roots them and prevents them from moving if they try and run away. And the big thing there, though, is that if you hit someone with a mark on them, the cooldown is reduced by 50%, meaning that you can use this to continuously stay on top of an enemy, which is, of course, very important when you're trying to kill them. And then, finally, your ultimate, Metamorphosis, is a big AoE ability that launches you at your opponents and then transforms you into a big demon. And you gain a bunch of extra HP depending on how many of your enemy heroes you hit. And you also apply the Mark of Azeroth to everything that is there, which then allows you to run around and kill everyone. Because everyone has the mark on them, so all of the buffs to your Crescent Sweep and your Lunge ability are applied. So what you're going to do in teamfights is you're just going to ult in on as many of them as possible. Remember that you gain more HP depending on how many heroes you hit. And then you're just going to lunge after every squishy target you can, killing as many people as you can during the duration of your Metamorphosis. So.
Great. That's awesome. Well, let's take a look at his talents and how we sort of want to build Illidan in order to be the most effective killer possible.
Yep, let's go take a look at that.
All right. Okay, so now that we've seen how Illidan's abilities work, which talents would you suggest?
Well, early on, at all of the first 3 tiers, you're going to be looking for cooldown reduction in his talents. The first one, very simple, Betrayer's Mark, increases the cooldown reduction per attack to 1 second. Just passively, his mark gives 0.5 cooldown reduction every time you auto-attack a target with the mark on them. So this just doubles that and massively increases your cooldown reduction. Then at level 4, we're going to be going for both blades. That lowers the cooldown of Betrayer's Strike to 6 seconds. This allows you to apply more marks, opens up the number of targets you can go after. And just apply the mark more frequently. Make sure that it doesn't dissipate, like in the middle of it, because you'll lunge and then you might not be able to get another mark on them if it is an 8 or 9 second cooldown, and then they can get away. This way you're going to have that up more frequently. You can make sure that your target is always marked and you can always get the bonus lunge and sweep damage on him. Then at level 7, more indirectly, we're going to go for cooldown reduction. Betrayer's Fury gives you increased attack speed by 30% for 4 seconds. And because his passive gives you cooldown reduction per attack, the higher attack speed not only increases your DPS, but it also increases your cooldown reduction, thus allowing you to lunge more, stick to your target more, and do more damage in general. And at level 10, like we talked about, we're going to be going for Metamorphosis. The Hunt is a pretty strong ability in its own right. On a lot of other heroes, it might actually be the go-to ultimate. And that's just a very divey, very long-range initiation, and it does a minor stun when you actually connect with the hero. And that's great if you're playing up against a 4 Protect 1 strategy, particularly with a Sergeant Hammer as the damage dealer. That's a great way to take single targets out of fights or to initiate on single targets. But just generally speaking, Metamorphosis is what makes you an absolute teamfight beast, and you're not enough of an assassin to not have any teamfight. You really need that to compensate for the fact that you don't have the same burst and the mobility of a Zeratul or something like that. Plus, it's just a fantastic ability. It's really, really strong. No reason to pass it up. Then at level 15, a little bit of diversity. Giant Killer is the general go-to here for damage dealers. It makes you do a ton of extra DPS, particularly against tanky heroes. Spell Shield, maybe worth considering if you're up against like a Nova who's really wrecking your day and just doing a ton of burst damage from her abilities. Might be worth considering, but generally not. And then Curse Strike is the go-to against squishies. It increases the damage as well as the silence from the Mark W that you get with your sweep. And that works very, very well because obviously they're squishy, more damage, they die faster, but also they tend to be more ability focused, so the longer duration silence is very, very powerful against them. Then at level 16, we're going to want to get Blood for sure. He has a bit of trouble chasing heroes down, as we've talked about, so the active 30% slow is fantastic, and then the 50% health steal always is great. Just very obviously, you take damage away, or you take HP away from them, you give HP to yourself. That gives you a little bit of an out if a team fight is going bad, if a one-on-one fight is going bad. That's just a fantastic ability in general. Then at level 20, all of the abilities are a little bit iffy. Fury of the Storm, you're not like a sustained right-clicker. You're not going to be standing and delivering. You're going to be moving around a lot. Your DPS is a little bit more on the bursty end, so Fury of the Storm isn't great for you. Resurgence always seems kind of nice, but without Metamorphosis, you're not that great at all. So coming back to life without your ultimate isn't really that helpful. Bolt is generally going to be the go-to with him. It helps you apply the mark so you can begin your chase. If you see a target, you can just blink on him, mark him, and then begin the lunging process. It also gives you a little bit of an escape, just in case you're caught with your ultimate down and you don't really have any kind of survivability. So Bolt of the Storm, always a good option, but particularly good on Illidan, especially compared to the other Storm Power abilities.
So it seems like early it's all about damage and building up your mark potential, and then from there you're going to get a little bit of utility so that you can crush people even harder.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. It seems like in the early section of the game you're going to be focusing a lot on cooldown reduction abilities, and towards the later game, after you get Metamorphosis for your ult, you have a little bit of flexibility based on the characters that you're fighting against.
Yeah, the entire game for Illidan is kind of just a ramp-up. Early on, you're not really going to do too much. You're very, very weak, just in terms of base HP. There's zero survivability if you get caught, so you have to play kind of back. You can look for opportunities. If you can get a mark on someone, then you do have a really good damage output. If you can catch them with a lunge, obviously that roots them. That allows your team to catch up and help you out. Silences are always very, very powerful. So if you can find the hole to go in and get something done, that's great. You're very good, relatively speaking, paired in lane with a Stitches or a Diablo, someone who can actually bring the enemy to you and allow you to apply a mark, because that really is the biggest thing. Like you said, we're aiming for cooldown reduction early on, because his abilities are the core of his damage output and pretty much everything about him. So without that mark, he's pretty useless, and without Metamorphosis, he's very squishy. So you have to be very, very careful early on, just kind of survive. You're going to be a bit of a liability to your team, honestly. But then once you hit level 10 and you get Metamorphosis, you start making that up. You want to be in team fights all the time. You're best against a lot of heroes, which is what makes him different from a lot of assassins. Usually they want to get in, pick off soul targets, but the more people he's fighting against, the more people he can put a mark on, and the more people he gets health from his Metamorphosis. So you're just going to want a Metamorphosis on top of the biggest pack of enemies that you can. And it's a very big radius, so that's not going to be too hard to do. And then you're just going to look for the squishies who are very important. So either like a Tyrant who hasn't cast her ult yet, she's fantastic for you to go on because you actually have a silence, so you can silence her and then kill her before she gets off any big spells, so you can take out a really high impact hero pretty much for free. And assuming that there aren't any of those around, then your next biggest target is going to be like a Demon Hunter or a Nova, some kind of squishy damage dealer who you can kill pretty quickly, or at least force out of the fight, force them to run away from you. And that's really about it. You're just going to run around for the duration of your ultimate. The big things to keep in mind are, remember, again, cooldowns. Everything is about the cooldown, particularly on lunge, because if you don't have lunge, everyone's just going to kite you and run away from you, and you're not going to accomplish anything. You should never lunge at someone who doesn't have a mark on them unless you're absolutely sure it's going to get you a kill, and that you don't have to then continue to fight. Because once your lunge goes on its normal cooldown, the non-halved one, there's not really much you can do for the next 6 to 9 seconds or so. So you have to be very, very careful about that. Keep that in mind. Otherwise, you're just using your abilities on cooldown, going after the squishies, and applying as much damage as you can.
Great. So now that you've kind of broken down how to play as Illidan, how do you play against him?
Well, like I said, the biggest thing is actually just to run away. He can man-fight anyone when he has Metamorphosis up. He does ridiculous damage, and he's very tanky. But again, he has problems with gap closers, so just run away from him. If he misses one lunge, he's basically out of the fight. So just try and keep an eye on that cooldown. Try and get comfortable with that. When you know it's coming up, start to move like erratically. Try and make him miss it, because if he misses it, he's not catching anyone, and he's not going to kill you. And then once his Metamorphosis runs out, he's like a Zeratul without stealth and without blink. So you just kind of attack him and you kill him. If you're a Nova, or someone really, really squishy who doesn't want to stand and fight, then you're still going to have to be a little bit afraid of him. But if you have any kind of team backup, or if you're a good man fighter yourself, then you can just kind of right-click on him and he'll die if he stays anywhere near you. He's very, very ultimate dependent. So anytime before 10, or anytime his ultimate is down, you don't really have to fear him at all.
And there you have it, guys. But remember, this is our best way to play, and we want to hear yours in the comments.
Be sure to head over to Greg's Twitch channel for more pro tips, and for everything Heroes of the Storm, stay tuned to IGN.